All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. Make sure you check out Pig and a Pickle. They've got two locations. They're in Emeryville, open Wednesday through Sunday, and they're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Marin County from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week. Get yourself the brisket and tell them that Krug sent you. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming NFL draft, and more specifically about this Yahoo report today from their reporter Charles Robinson. Now, he reported back in January that the 49ers' confidence level in Trey Lance is, quote, very low right now. And then he went on a podcast recently and said that the compensation in any potential trade that would move Trey Lance out of San Francisco would likely be a second-round pick. In fact, he went on the UPod to Win the Game podcast, and Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports shared his belief and basically said that right now, if you offered the 49ers a second-round pick, that you could get Trey Lance. And he's throwing this out there. Now, I don't know who his source is, but somebody has told him that if you offer the 49ers a second-round pick, you can get Trey Lance. Now, while this is going on, there's also a report out that the Texans may wind up not going with a quarterback at the top of the draft, that they may go with Will Anderson out of Alabama at the number 2 pick. Now, Bryce Young is the number 1 pick in the draft. Carolina has the number 1 pick. Houston's supposed to pick number 2. And if Bryce Young goes number 1, supposedly he did really well on this cognitive test. Supposedly C.J. Stroud of the Ohio State Buckeyes, supposedly he did not. And there's a lot of talk that Nick Caserio, who's the general manager currently of the Houston Texans, may wind up going with a defensive player at the top of the draft and bypassing the rest of the top quarterbacks. And that would mean saying no to C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, basically just saying that, we think that we're gonna go get our quarterback somewhere else. Now, they obviously need a quarterback because they only have Davis Mills and Case Keenum currently. But it is year 1 of a rebuild. D'Amico Ryan's got a 6-year contract, just like Kyle Shanahan, and he's starting a rebuild. How does this all impact the 49ers? Does it? Well, I don't know if it does or not. But if the Texans don't go quarterback at number 2, and they potentially could be a candidate to trade for Trey Lance. And if you're the 49ers, you say, well, if you believe Charles Robinson of Yahoo, then you're thinking that the 49ers would gladly take a second-round pick. The Texans have the 33rd pick overall in the draft. That's the beginning of round 2. They also have 2 picks in the 3rd round, pick number 65 and pick number 73. And if they had to pass on all the quarterbacks for Will Anderson, maybe they would want to trade the second-round pick or maybe even a couple of those 3rd-round picks to the 49ers for Trey Lance. We know the Niners are listening to offers. Now, Robinson is speculating their price is a second-round pick. We've heard other people speculate this week that their price tag is a 2 and a 4. They do have the Texans do have the 2 third-round picks. Why does the Texans make sense? Well, they're in the AFC. They also are kind of 49ers South. D'Amico Ryans is the head coach. There's a lot of talk that Bill Belichick may get stripped of some of his power in New England, and that Nick Caserio could wind up leaving Houston and going back to New England as the general manager in New England with a lot more control over the final roster than he probably had when he was there previously. So the talk is that Caserio leaves Houston and that Adam Peters, the 49ers assistant GM to John Lynch, would then join D'Amico Ryans and a number of other Niner people, by the way, in Houston and kind of create this 49ers South. So Bobby Slowick is the offensive coordinator down there. He obviously coached Trey Lance this last year. I don't know if D'Amico Ryans likes Trey Lance or doesn't. I don't know if Bobby Slowick likes Trey Lance or doesn't. I don't know if Adam Peters likes Trey Lance or doesn't. So these are all kind of unknowns at this point. But if you read the tea leaves and you look at this and say, well, wait a second, if the Texans aren't going to take a top quarterback, and they do have a high second-round pick, and they do have 2 third-round picks, and the Niners are willing to take a second-round pick for Trey, are the Texans willing to trade the 33rd pick in the draft for Trey Lance. Now, let's talk about that, because to me, does it make any sense that they would do that? And I think they would. Why? Because I think Trey Lance is a better prospect than the same quarterback they could get in the draft in the second round. I think Trey Lance is superior to Hendon Hooker, to Jake Haener, to Tanner McKee, to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, to Jaron Hall, to Aiden O'Connell, to Clayton Tune, to Max Duggan, to Stetson Bennett, to Malik Cunningham, to Tyson Bagent. I mean, beauty is always in the eye of the beholder when it comes to quarterbacks. So the guy that I like, you may not like, and the guy that you like, I may not like. So it's not like there's any rhyme or reason to this thing. But if you ask most NFL people, I think most NFL people would prefer Trey Lance to all those quarterbacks I just named, from Hooker to Haener to McKee to DTR, right on down the line. So if the 49ers are willing to take a second-round pick, and that's an accurate report, and Trey Lance is better than the second-round quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, and I believe that to be the case, I think there's probably a deal to be made. Now, how eager are the Niners to move Trey Lance? That's the question. And here's the big question. Do the Niners prefer a quarterback competition starting this summer with Trey Lance going against Sam Darnold, and then maybe someday one of those two guys going against Brock Purdy? Or do they want to commit to Brock Purdy and have Sam Darnold as the hand-picked backup, and maybe go after a Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who they've met with twice leading into this upcoming draft? And maybe that's the route they want to go. Maybe they want to go with Purdy as the starter, Darnold as the 2, Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the practice squad 3, very clear, defined pecking order of who's your 1, 2, and 3 quarterback. That might be what they prefer. Or they may prefer to, they may think that the chance is better than Brock Purdy and better than Sam Darnold, or at least comparable, and they want to see the 3 guys battle it out. If they stay with what they've got, Lance and Darnold will battle it out in camp this summer and in the preseason. But if they're battling it out to be the backup to Brock Purdy, and if the 49ers have already decided they want to go with Brock Purdy, who knows? They may not want Darnold to battle Lance for the backup job. They may not want anybody to challenge Brock Purdy. If they've made the evaluation that Purdy's the guy, maybe they don't. Maybe they want a more clearly defined quarterback room going forward. You can't fault them if they do. And then you look at you say, well, how are the 49ers, who are getting close to the Super Bowl but not winning one, what do they actually need to do to win one? Well, they got to get the quarterback position right. That's clear. But they may need just one great player to be added to the mix. And you say, well, what can they get for a Trey Lance trade? I don't know. But if you can get a second-round pick, maybe you can get one great player. Now, looking at the mock drafts and looking at the 49ers and just projecting, let's just say they had this deal on the table with the Texans and they could get that 33rd pick overall, that high second-round pick. Who's on the board that they would want, that would make that trade worthwhile to begin with, that would even make them consider trading Trey Lance in a situation where they don't even know what Brock Purdy is yet because he's coming off the injury? But what would motivate them to make this trade? I think if they had a really high grade on about 5 or 6 players that potentially could be there, I could see the 49ers pulling the trigger. Why? Because if you're going with Brock Purdy, and you add a significant player in the draft at the end of the first round or the top of the second round, maybe that's enough to get over the top. Maybe that's enough to beat Kansas City. Maybe that's enough to beat Philadelphia. That's what it's all about. It's about trying to get that 6th Lombardi trophy for the trophy case. So I'm just looking at the mock drafts and seeing who's there. Houston's got the 33rd pick. If you could get that pick, Kalijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh's going to be there. I mean, what a specimen he is. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He's an absolute monster as a kind of an odd-shaped pass rusher at 6'1", 285 pounds. But the guy's a tremendous football player. There's Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback from Mississippi State, who's got some Deion Sanders qualities to him. The guy had 14 career interceptions. 6 of them were pick sixes. I mean, this guy can break on the football. You're looking for that dominant outside corner who takes away the other team's number 1 receiver. Emmanuel Forbes could be it. Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame. Michael Mayer could be the next great tight end. They call him Baby Gronk. He could be the next great tight end to enter the NFL. You have a 2 tight end set with George Kittle and Michael Mayer. You could be really quite a good football team if that's what you have. Isaiah Foskey, the defensive end from Notre Dame. Bay Area kid, Antioch High School. He's from Antioch, I should say. He went to De La Salle High School in Concord. 6'5", 260. Best football's coming up right now. Team captain. Big, athletic, talented. He could be a blue chip starter opposite Nick Bosa for the next decade. Then there's the freaky workout warrior leading into the draft, Adetomiwa Adebawore, the defensive end for Northwestern. The combination of his combine workout and what he did in the All-Star games and in the All-Star game practices leading into those All-Star games, Adebawore looks totally unblockable. He could be there. And then there's Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, the Niners have Christian McCaffrey, and they've got J.P. Mason, and they've got Elijah Mitchell, and they've got TDP. But Jahmyr Gibbs, as a receiver in this offense, could be Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL. I mean, he's a true difference maker. He's dynamic. He is a superstar playmaking, receiving running back. So I just threw you 6 names right there. I gave you a half dozen names. And that's if the 49ers wound up pulling the trigger on this deal, getting a high second-round pick. They could have those kinds of difference-making players staring them in the face. So very interesting day for sure. Interesting on a lot of fronts. It's interesting that the 49ers have had multiple meetings with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's very interesting to me that the Texans may wind up with Adam Peters as their general manager. It's very interesting that the Texans may wind up not going quarterback at the top of the draft and maybe would still have a need for a quarterback and may look at Trey Lance as a trade option. And it's very interesting that the 49ers South is now kind of formulating in Houston with Bobby Slowick, the OC, D'Amico Ryans, the head coach, maybe even Adam Peters going there as the general manager. And we just don't know. We don't know how Peters or D'Amico or Slowick actually feel about Trey Lance. But if they don't want to go quarterback at the top of the draft, they want to go with an impact defensive player, man, the Texans could do a lot worse than trading a second-round pick or a couple third-round picks to the 49ers for Trey Lance. In that situation, I think Houston is almost the ideal situation for Trey to be in. It's a rebuilding team with a head coach that knows him and likes him, that's got a 6-year contract, that's running the same offense that you've been in the last couple of years. So you don't have to learn a new offense, new terminology, or any of that. You're walking into an offense that you know, playing for a head coach that you know, potentially playing for a general manager that you know, on a team that is not ready to win right now and is going to give you all of the repetitions that you need, mental reps, physical reps, so that you can get your career back on track. And for the 49ers, what do they get out of it? They get a really good football player in the high second round or in the 2 players in the third round. And they get to commit to Brock Purdy and go with Sam Darnold and maybe back those guys up with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So I don't know. When I first suggested that Trey could be traded, I was reading the tea leaves, but it wasn't necessarily, I didn't see a fit, like a natural fit. Is Tennessee a natural fit? Are the Jets a natural fit? They could be. I think what you're looking for is a team that's not a contender, preferably in the AFC, with a front office and a coaching staff that has a fondness for Trey as a person, as a prospect, and believes in him and wants to invest in him. And in a lot of ways, the Texans, check every single box. So, what am I getting out of this report today? That this writer for Yahoo is basically saying that 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 the Texans may not go quarterback at the top of the draft, and this whole report. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of it. It's interesting that Charles Robinson thinks that Trey Lance can be had for a second-round pick. Is that his opinion, or does he have a source? I don't know. And then the question is, would the Texans give their high second-round pick? I don't know that either. But I could definitely see this all coming together, and I could see Trey Lance in Houston on draft day. Don't know if it's going to happen. Not rooting for it, but it is interesting when you look at all these different elements that seem to be pointing towards a trade of Trey Lance. All right, hope you enjoyed the 49er video. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show. And make sure you check out all my videos on YouTube.